So now that we've npm installed those three packages, we should see a new entry in our package.json file with the title dev dependencies and all three of those dependencies listed within it. So we're going to make use of these three Webpack dependencies, but first we're going to create some folders for our project. We're going to create one folder that's going to house all of our JavaScript files called source or src, and we're going to create another folder called dist, which will be a kind of output folder. It'll contain a finalized JavaScript file and an index.html file. And we'll create that index.html file right now. So in the file, if we type an exclamation point and hit tab, in VS Code this will allow us to create a very basic HTML document. And what I'm going to do is replace the title of document with GitHub Finder. That's the title I'm going to give my application. And within the body, I'm going to write the abbreviation div #root. And when I hit tab, what will appear is a div with the ID of root. So this is a kind of shortcut. And within the source folder, we're going to create a couple of JavaScript files. One called index.js, and I'll create another called test.js. And what I want to do right now is demo the benefit of using Webpack, which we'll implement in just a second. So Webpack allows us to use what's called ES6 modules, and I'll show you right now what that is exactly. So we're going to create a variable called text. We're going to set that equal to the string hello world, and we want to pass this variable to another file. We're going to pass it to index.js, and to do that we'll say export default text. So this is a way to export a variable or a function, any bit of data that we like, to any JavaScript file that we choose. And if a JavaScript file wants to consume that variable, what we can say is import text. So we specify the variable, the piece of data that we want, and then we specify the path by saying from, and since it's in the same folder, we're going to reference the file of test, which is represented by /test. And you might think that we need to add .js at the end, but whenever we're using JavaScript files, we can just omit that. And so now, what we want to do is output that text to the div with the ID of root that we created. So to do that, we'll say document.querySelector. So this is how we'll select our div, and to do that we'll pass it #root. And then we're going to want to replace the text in that div or add text within that div by saying .innerText and set it to the string hello world, which is represented by that text variable we're importing. So now we need to create a couple of scripts. We need to do something in our application to actually make this work. So we're going to create a script with the name of build, and we're going to use Webpack in order to create a JavaScript file using these ES6 modules. So we can save all those files. Let's go to our terminal, and we're going to say npm run build. So when it runs Webpack, it'll run a script, and within our dist folder we'll get a bunch of output within our terminal. We'll see this information that says asset and the size of the asset. We get a main.js file, and below it's saying it's coming from our index.js file and our test.js file, and we're also getting this warning in our configuration, which we'll address later. But you can see, if you take a look in our dist folder, this new main.js file is created. Let's click on that to take a look at it, and if you see, we have all of this minified JavaScript, all of this scrunched up code. And if you take a look at the very end, we can see the code that we wrote. But basically all the code that's written before allows us to make use of that import-export syntax. And then let's create another script. This will be slightly different than the build script. We're going to call it watch and set it to Webpack with a flag, which is --watch. So Webpack with the flag of watch, and let's try running that script. Say npm run watch. And it'll start up just like our build script. We get the same output with our assets. However, if we add some JavaScript and any of the files in our source folder, let's add something to index.js, and you'll see that initially we have our output with a size for our main asset, but if we save that file, we can see that the size of main.js becomes slightly larger. So what happens is we're basically still running this Webpack script where it's building a new main.js file, but Webpack is watching our JavaScript files within the source folder for any changes. So this will be a useful script for us that we'll use in development. And finally, we're going to create a dev script or a development script. And this is going to make use of a couple of different things. First, we're going to write Webpack dev server, and this is necessary to actually output our index.html file to the browser. And we're going to say double and npm run watch. So we're going to run at the end of our script that watch script that we just created. And to be able to run this last script, we're going to need to add some script tags to our index.html right at the very end of the body and set the source to main.js. So this is going to make sure that we're running that JavaScript file whenever we open our index.html file. And so whenever we run npm run dev, also one thing I want to note is that you can add an open flag to the dev script, which will open our browser when we run it. So let's run npm run dev. It opens our project. You can see our directories, our different folders within our project listed in the browser. We can click on the dist folder and you can see we have our index.html file.